Hello, Xers and interwebbers. Welcome to Naive in the 90s, the podcast. I'm your host, Emily. I was a 70s baby, an 80s kid, and a 90s troublemaker. Teen. On today's episode, we're going to talk about music and its reach over generations, as well as the new trend of gatekeeping that seems to be happening a lot recently. But first, a quick passage from my book Naive in the 90s, which is a creative nonfiction transcribed from my own real-life diaries and journals from the early and mid-90s. You can get it now on Amazon. August 4th, 1994. Went to Rhode Island for Lollapalooza yesterday with Dave, James, and Jim. It was wild. They got a party ball of beer. We drank and smoked the whole way. And when we got almost there, we saw this huge group of hippies. And for some reason, James yelled for them to all pile into the bus, even though the rest of us were like, no. They all got in, and it got super crowded and hot. And after we finally got in and parked, I puked. Ew. But it was all good after. We went in and saw all sorts of freaks. Some girl changed her tampon right in the crowd. So gross, it was insane. George Clinton was awesome. The Beastie Boys were unforgettable. And James was drunk and clingy. Yuck. Afterwards, we came back to town and hung out behind Kenny Rogers Roasters with a couple of James' work friends. It was fun. Overall, it was a great time, and I'm so happy I went. I still can't believe my parents let me go. I'll never forget it. To this day, that was seriously one of the greatest concerts that I have ever been to. And when I say that I've been to a lot of concerts, I mean I have been to a ton of them over the years. Like, so many I can't actually remember all of the bands that I've seen live. But it truly was just a great experience to have, even though at the time I did have some drama going on with Dave and James. Going with them and with Jim, who had been friends with them for at least through junior high. I met him in high school, as I did James and Dave. But we had just a great time, and I really cherish those memories, especially because we did lose Jim. He was in the army, and he was killed overseas quite a few years ago, and it's really sad. But that is one of the memories that I really hold dear for a lot of reasons. So today I want to talk about music and how it spans generations and connects people. I think music is one of the things in life that no matter where you are from or your age or your belief system or really anything, that music is universally loved. In every single culture, in every single era, all over the world, music has been prominent. It has been used to pass down stories, both real and fictitious, used in celebrations, both sad and joyous. It is one of the biggest contributions humans have continued to provide for all of time. Whether vocalizing or making a beat that people feel deep down in their bones, music seems to be the one factor that all humans have been enamored with. As a small kid, my music taste, like most children, stemmed from what I was exposed to, what my parents listened to, and what was being pumped out into the world around me. Having been born in the late 70s, I was exposed to such a large amount of great music, like the Beatles and their side projects, Paul McCartney's Wings, and my parents also listened to stuff like John Denver, the Bee Gees, Linda Ronstadt, Crystal Gayle, and if I dug a little deeper into the record and tape collection, I would find The Doors, Jethro Tull, Black Sabbath, and Led Zeppelin, just to name a few. I always loved music, almost obsessively. Although now I realize that probably has at least a little to do with my neurospicy squirrel brain and the need for consistent stimulation, but that's a whole other conversation. I can remember being around 4 or 5 and having my mom's record albums propped up against the stereo, sitting in my little wicker chair, pretending that the people in the pictures on the cover were singing to me. I specifically remember that Michael Jackson's The Thriller album was my favorite. It was world changing, or at least my world. I could stare at him all day long with that baby tiger. I didn't know who Billie Jean was, but I knew she wasn't his lover, which in my mind made him fair game and left open the position, which of course I didn't understand at the time. I equated it to hanging out with this man and his baby tiger, holding hands maybe, while he sang to me. Super cool lover life stuff. Like, even with the song The Girl Is Mine that he did with Paul McCartney, I pretended that they were fighting over me. I mean, I was such a weird little girl. Even more embarrassing, sometimes the album I would stare at was the one with Barry Gibb and Barbra Streisand. I think it was called Guilty. I'm not even sure, and I literally don't even remember any songs that were on it. I just remember I thought his beard and his hair were so awesome. And I'd actually get jealous of Barbra Streisand and the hug that they were sharing. It was so ridiculous. I guess there were signs I was a love-starved, needy girl long before high school and the events that took place in my book. Like, red flags everywhere. This girl needs a hug. Please love her. Through my parents and the other grown-ups in my life, and of course through the radio, and then MTV, which started when I was 4, and yes, I do remember it, I ended up loving a huge spectrum of music. This love, including the diversity of any kind of music, would travel with me throughout life. Even now, if you look at my music collection or at my playlist, no doubt you would find something that you like, and probably something that you hate. My kids, along with many others through the years, have been left wide-eyed and slack-jawed over the songs, and even artists, that will play back to back. I like to think my music taste is eclectic, just like my heritage and personality. At any given time, if my music is playing, you will hear a multitude of different genres and artists, from Iron Maiden to the Monkees, Dirty Heads to Taylor Swift, Peachka to Poe, and from Snoop Dogg to Four Non Blondes or Alice in Chains to BB Rexa, or Blackpink to Common Kings. Just like the infamous box of chocolates, you never know what you're going to get, and I love it that way. Without the influence of the past and older generations, I would not have experienced as much of the music that I have, which is why it really makes me sad that nowadays it seems trendy, especially for people my age, to judge the younger generations for listening or wearing shirts of bands or artists that would be considered before their time. Now, don't get me wrong, I totally get that some are just into the aesthetic and not into the actual music. But even that makes me think about how in high school, all of a sudden, a huge amount of kids, and we were kids, became deadheads. Yes, the Grateful Dead were still around and were touring at the time, but it certainly wasn't the same as when they were at their peak. We, like many generations before, were exposed to certain music because of the former generations. For me, one of my aunts and also one of my uncles, they were huge Dead fans. So well before teens of the early 90s were all sporting tie-dyes and Dead bears, Sugar Magnolia and Terrapin Station were some of my favorite songs. And never once did I question why any of us loved the Dead or their music. And never once was I or anyone I know quizzed by any of the grown-ups to name 3 songs or 3 band members. It's just like, what? Hell, the name 3 songs thing would get me now. I am absolutely horrendous with names and song titles. Like, I've been listening to Tool and Slayer for decades. Like, so long. I've seen both of them in concert multiple times. Slayer more than I can count or remember. But name 3 songs? Nope. Does that make me not a real fan? Can I not wear the shirts anymore? Am I on some sort of music probation now? That idea is ridiculous, and gatekeeping music just looks bad on everyone. Like, why? What is the point? To make one feel superior? Does quizzing people on songs and band members make people feel cool? I literally do not get it. Shouldn't we as fans and music lovers relish in the idea that the younger generations are not only exposed to the music we love, but are also embracing it? And yes, even if it just starts out for the look, because I guarantee, I know for a fact that everyone who was wearing a tie-dye with Dead Bears marching on it did not listen to the Dead, that those kids simply liked the colors and the looks. And I'm pretty sure adults of the time weren't harassing or quizzing any of us. It just seems super petty and honestly a really odd hill to plant your flag on. How about using these opportunities to connect with the younger generations? Instead of can you name 3 songs, try asking what they like about said band or artist. Try sharing your favorite 3 songs. Tell them about a song that you think they'd enjoy that they may have not heard of. Share an experience you've had listening to them or seeing them live. There is so much that we can find common ground on with music. Why make it into a divisive factor when it should be something that brings people together? I personally love that music I grew up listening to and that was significant to me is still loved and enjoyed by those who are younger. I think it's actually fantastic that there are still people who are just discovering music that has carried not only myself, but so many others through this life. Why would any real fan or music lover not want that? Could you imagine if this was how everyone had been about music of their time? It'd be something like, oh, well, I see you have a Mozart bust on your mantelpiece. Nice, but can you name 3 of his compositions? I didn't think so. A poser. Just, no. That isn't okay. And it is just such a dumb and toxic way to be. Oh gosh, yikes. Music is timeless. It truly shows what life was like at that moment, showcases what people were thinking and feeling, what society was like, what was going on, and what was important. But it also tends to focus on those feelings and experiences that are universal and classic. Things that no matter when or where it is heard invokes some inner spark in all of us. Why would we want to gatekeep that? Why would we want to keep that only to ourselves? How very closed off and selfish to do that. It's kind of funny when I think about it. If someone was to ask me what are the 3 bands or musical artists that are not only my favorites but would be used to describe me personally, my choices wouldn't be from just one era or even one decade. My choices would be The Doors, Korn, and Ashnikko. 3 totally different genres, 3 totally different sounds, and 3 totally different times. One from before I was born, one from my teen and young adulthood, and the other just from the last few years. All 3 are on heavy rotation, almost annoyingly to those around me. Well, okay, most likely super annoying to those around me, because I listen to them a lot. But I love all 3, despite when they came out, and absolutely despite being able to name 3 songs or not. When it comes down to it, just enjoy the music you like, and let others enjoy and even wear the music they like. It truly is of no consequence to you or anyone else, one way or the other. Live and let live, or as Wings in Guns N' Roses would say, live and let die. Both phrases literally meaning to just do you and don't worry about what others are doing, or in this case, listening to. It's okay, I promise. You will survive, and so will the music. Well, that will do it for this episode of Naive in the 90s, the podcast. But I do want to take a minute and say thank you so much for joining me. I truly appreciate every single person who has taken the time to stop by. Every time I see that someone new listened to any of the episodes, I actually end up smiling at my phone like a big dork. I'm amazed that anyone wants to hear me talk, really, about anything. So seriously, thank you. And although this podcast may be mostly me babbling and rambling, I do want to let you know I do have some guests planned, mostly a few people that were in my book or around at the time. I think it'll be really fun to explore their perspectives of growing up naive in the 90s. So there is that to look forward to. Don't forget to come back in 2 weeks for a new topic, and make sure to follow to be notified for when new episodes go live. For any feedback or comments, please feel free to send me a message at naiveinthe90s@gmail.com. And don't forget to grab a copy of my book, Naive in the 90s, available on Amazon. Thank you again, and until next time, peace and love, my dudes.